Deliver a plan to end the Ukraine war. That's the demand roared by a member of Russia's parliament directly to Vladimir Putin, and Russia's president is shaken. His parliament isn't supposed to say things like that, but these people know they're supposed to bend down and kiss the ring. Forbidden or not, it was just said, the war has gone on too long. Russia is on the brink of collapse, and it's all Putin's fault. Putin is furious. But he also accepts that he has just been given a sharp dose of reality from the one place that is supposed to prop up his narrative. In statements that have rocked Russia's parliament and sent shockwaves to the very core of the Kremlin, Vyacheslav Markayev has delivered a blistering riposte to the narrative that Putin has spun ever since he launched his Ukraine invasion. A deputy of the State Duma and part of Russia's Communist Party, which is one of the few that attempts to oppose Putin in modern-day Russia, Markayev delivered a long tirade in which he accused Putin of ineffective leadership and then rattled off a list of the reasons why he claims that his statement is 100% accurate. Waves of corruption that flow throughout all of Russia, an oligarchy propped up by Putin's policies, and most damning of all, the destruction of what Markayev calls the most active and reproductively capable segment of the population, all now lie on Putin's shoulders. The message is clear. Putin has sacrificed an entire generation of Russians to his Ukraine bloodbath, and it's about time he was held to account. The time of illusions is over. The country is on the brink of social explosion, and the blame for this will fall squarely on the entrenched ruling power, Markayev declared as he blasted Putin in front of the entire Russian parliament. He added, "If the situation persists, social unrest and chaos will become more likely. The West will inevitably exploit this to destroy the remnants of Russian statehood," Markayev said in his final message to Russia's leader. What's remarkable about these comments is how brazen they are. This isn't some policymaker making vague claims that maybe, just maybe, Putin has surrounded himself with the wrong people and needs to consider changing his course. This is a warning blared from Russia's parliament directly to the seat of power, and it says that Putin is a failing leader who is going to be put in his place sooner rather than later. But here's where this gets really serious for Putin. This isn't just some rogue member of parliament going on the attack. Markayev embodies a growing wellspring of anger inside Russia that extends not only to other members of Putin's pro-Kremlin gang, but right down to the very people that Putin relies on to be happy to die for his bloody Ukraine campaign. Markayev is just the latest prominent figure inside Russia who has it out for the country's president. In mid-May, Renat Suleimanov, who is another State Duma deputy from Russia's Communist Party, explained in an interview that he believed that the special military operation was having a damning effect on Russia. Russia's economy will not withstand a prolonged continuation of the Ukraine war, the lawmaker said, as he pointed out that military spending now accounts for over 40% of Russia's budget and that military sector goods have no consumer value. At the same time, adopting a budget with reduced military spending is not the most difficult thing. But what will happen to the people employed in the defense industry? To those currently under arms? 1 million people will return to civilian life. Where are the jobs, decent salaries, and social adaptation? Suleimanov asked. And he has a point. Putin seems to have as little plan for what comes after Ukraine as he does for what Russia is trying to do inside Ukraine right now, and another politician has put Russia's leader on blast. Okay, so these are figures from Russia's Communist Party. They're getting braver, but they are still a party that opposes Putin, so it's natural for them to say these kinds of things in the State Duma. Maybe, assuming you forget about Putin's propensity to ensure that those who oppose him somehow end up in the gulags or falling from open windows. But to hammer the point home, it's not just opposition politicians who are calling Putin out. Another prominent figure who is calling for an end to Putin's reign is Ilya Remezlo. For most of the war, he's been as much of a Putin brown-noser as anybody, as he spent years going after critics of Putin's regime and running smear campaigns against journalists who dared to expose Putin's failures. Now, Remezlo has turned his back on Putin. He's gone from pro-Kremlin to burn Putin down as he published a post on Telegram to his 90,000 followers, explaining the reasons why he no longer supports the president he has professed to love for so many years. Again, we see the same type of reasoning. Poor military leadership, a generation of Russian people dead for a failing war, the collapse of Russia's economy. Putin is an illegitimate leader, Remezlo blared in his piece, and he should resign and be put on trial as a war criminal. Make no mistake about it, these naysayers are rats, and they're doing what rats do, which is flee the sinking ship when they see that it's on the verge of going down. That's what Putin is right now, a ship that has been blasted apart in open waters. Those who once supported him are fleeing. Those who perhaps pretended to support him for fear of what he might do if they didn't are getting a whole lot braver. The fear is gone. The message is being sent out. Russia is on the brink of total societal collapse, and it's all Putin's fault. Putin may be enraged about what these politicians and former cronies are saying about him, but he'll be terrified over the fact that their words seem to be resonating with the Russian population. If it were just a few prominent figures calling Putin out, Russia's leader wouldn't be too worried. There are plenty of open windows in Russia and more than enough opportunities for certain people to take dangerous falls. But Putin's real problem is that there is an undercurrent of anger among the Russian population to go alongside all of this fury spewing from the mouths of parliamentarians. Let's take a look at the polls. Oh, hold on a second. We can't. Why? As the Telegraph reports, the Russian Public Opinion Research Center, or VCIOM, which is a state-controlled pollster, is no longer going to publish what were previously open trust ratings for Putin. We're not saying open sarcastically here. VCIOM creates both open and closed polls. The latter sees the pollster ask respondents directly whether or not they trust Putin and his ilk. But open polls are different. They call on respondents to name politicians whom they trust without any sort of prompting. And it's these polls that provide you with the true state of the average Russian's trust in Putin in 2026. Back in March, over 70% of those who were quizzed in closed polls about Putin claimed that they trusted Russia's leader. Not as high as Putin would have wanted to see, but good enough for a type of poll that comes with the hidden warning that anybody who says they don't trust their leader could be punished. But in open polls from the same month, only 29.5% of Russians directly named Putin as a politician they feel they can trust, before this type of poll was mysteriously discontinued in April. That tells you all that you really need to know. When they aren't being asked about Putin directly, Russia's people are saying they would trust anybody but him to do the job he's been doing for more than a quarter of a century. Let's take a deeper dive into those polls. In a May 22nd piece, Medusa revealed that surveys from the Public Opinion Foundation, which is another of Russia's leading polling organizations, revealed that Putin's overall approval rating had fallen to its lowest point in a year. It was still relatively high, with 71% saying that they believed Putin was performing rather well. But remember what we've already seen about these types of closed polls. When asked directly about Putin, most Russians default to saying that he's doing a good job out of fear. Far more interesting from this particular poll is that 14% of those quizzed were brave enough to say directly that Putin is doing rather poorly, which again is the highest number in a year. So it's not just Communist Party deputies and former pro-Kremlin propagandists who have lost faith in Putin. The Russian people, when answering honestly, are telling their leader that they no longer trust his judgment. But these are just results and actions that we've seen publicly. The well of discontent in Russia goes so much deeper, as leaked documents have revealed that support for Putin isn't just faltering, it's falling off a cliff. That changes everything for Russia's leader. And a quick side note before we explain why, this is The Military Show, and reports like these are why we make videos. We expose the reality of the Ukraine war and dig deep beyond the headlines. If you're enjoying what you see, remember to subscribe and support the channel. In the wake of Markayev's blistering tirade against his leader, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky revealed that Ukrainian intelligence has intercepted classified Russian documents from deep inside the Kremlin. The information on those documents isn't good for Russia's leader, Zelensky revealed. The so-called forecast indicators of Russians' dissatisfaction with Putin will continue to grow steadily, Zelensky declared, adding, "He has already begun to be accustomed to the idea that the growth of dissatisfaction cannot be stopped, and this indicator will not plateau before September, when parliamentary elections are scheduled in Russia." The numbers make for terrible reading if you are Vladimir Putin. According to the Kremlin's own internal projections, only 55% of Russia's population will approve of Putin's actions by the time that 2026 State Duma elections begin in September. Even more worrying for Putin is that 33% are projected to explicitly express disapproval, with another 12% either being undecided or falling into categories other than "we love and trust our president." Putin will already have been caught off guard by this report. But what really worries him is that the party he rules, United Russia, is experiencing a steady downward trend in support, Zelensky reveals. That's a problem come election time in September, as it provides openings for opposing parties, such as the Russian Communist Party, whose members are calling Putin out, to make significant gains in Russia's parliament. The United Russia Party's solution to this problem will apparently be to use significantly more falsifications to get the results that Putin needs to get for him to maintain control over the State Duma. No matter where Putin looks, he's seeing Russian people who are ready for a change. They see that Russia is on the brink of collapsing, and their fingers are pointed directly at a man who spends more time hidden away in bunkers than he does leading his country nowadays. And somehow, it all gets worse for Putin. The leaked documents don't just reveal a collapse in support for Putin and his party. They also claim that there has been a measurable growth in what the documents dub protest moods across several Russian regions. That claim gels with a May 14th report by United 24 Media, which claimed that protest potential inside Russia had reached its highest level in almost 2 years. According to that report, a poll conducted by the independent Levada Center revealed that 20% of Russians believe that protests against the declining living standards in Russia are possible, which gives an unsubtle hint about one of the reasons why Putin is seeing so much backlash right now. Another 14% say that they believe protests with political demands are likely. Back in November 2025, which is the last time the Levada Center ran this poll, the percentages were 16% and 11% respectively. The numbers have grown. And when taken with everything else that we're seeing, it's clear that the Russian people are sick and tired of Putin forcing a war onto them that is clearly crippling their country. That brings us nicely to why all of this is happening now. Zelensky tells us something about the leaked documents that reveals one of the reasons why Putin's popularity is plummeting and why he is now being called out in Russia's parliament. We believe that these reports do not even take into account the potential events of June, July, and August, which cannot but affect the situation in Russia additionally, Zelensky says. In other words, the deaths of Russian people on a massive scale play a huge role in Putin's decline in popularity, and it's only going to get worse as Russia launches into its summer offensive. The much-vaunted spring offensive was bad enough for Russia. Assaults that were supposed to set the stage for the collapse of Donetsk instead delivered death and injury on a massive scale to Russia. In both March and April, Russia lost around 35,000 soldiers to Ukraine's defenses. May wasn't much better, as Russia's battlefield losses exceeded 30,000, for a rough total of 110,000 Russians dead or injured as a result of the spring offensive. That's accounted for in the leaked Kremlin report, but the projections don't appear to account for what's going to happen to Russia over the course of a summer where it tries to ramp up its assaults even more. Early indicators aren't good for Putin. On June 13th alone, Russia lost 1,440 soldiers, Pravda reports, so it's not like the already devastating casualty count is coming down. If anything, it's getting higher. Putin's response to this has been to institute a creeping form of mobilization that will lead to even more Russian death and, as a result, yet more discontent among a public that already believes Putin is leading their country to ruin. On June 13th, Pravda reported that Putin had signed a new decree that increased the total authorized strength of the Russian armed forces to 2,399,130 personnel, with 1,510,000 of those being active service members. This, despite the fact that Russia is falling short of its volunteer goals. The Kyiv Independent reports that Ukrainian intelligence reveals that 70,500 people signed up to become soldiers for Russia during the first 3 months of 2026, which is 30,000 short of Russia's goal and almost 20,000 fewer than the 90,000 who had signed up during the same period in 2025. Yet Putin says that Russia's military must grow. At this point, it's looking like mobilization will be his only option, and that means the anger that is already inside Russia over losing a generation of its young men, as Markayev blared in the State Duma, will only intensify. That's bad for Putin. But what's worse is that Russian anger extends beyond the sheer scale of death that has resulted from Putin's invasion. As the Telegraph points out, Russian defense expenditure has reached levels that we haven't seen since the Cold War era. It says that military spending rose by 30% in early 2026, compared to the year before, meaning that Putin's war accounts for 46% of Russia's total budget spending. Militanu confirms that assessment in a report where it says that almost every second ruble in the Russian state budget is going toward the war. Think back to the Levada Center polls we mentioned earlier. Levada discovered that 20% of Russians believe that protests are likely because of the declining standards of living inside Russia. This ridiculous military spending would underpin those protests, as it's Putin's obsession with his war that is driving Russia off an economic cliff. But there are people who have spoken out about this, adding to the voices that are calling for Putin to either make a change or get out of the way. The governor of Russia's central bank, Elvira Nabiullina, has been warning of an impending economic crisis for about a year now. At the 2025 version of the annual St. Petersburg Economic Forum, Nabiullina, along with others, warned that Russia's economy is heading toward a recession. Almost a year later, in April 2026, she said that Russia had a labor shortfall of 2.5 million, in a situation she claims she has never seen before in the history of modern Russia. Nabiullina may not be calling for Putin's head like those in Russia's Communist Party, but she has been making it clear that Putin's economic policies are to blame for Russia's situation. So what is Nabiullina saying in the summer of 2026? Not much, as it turns out. Nabiullina wasn't present at the 2026 version of the forum where she issued her recession warning a year prior, and she hasn't been seen much at all during the last few weeks. She also skipped an interest rate meeting with Putin and his ministers during the first week of June. The Kremlin says that she's on sick leave. This is Russia, and Nabiullina has been pointing toward an economic crisis that Putin doesn't want to have exposed. Is she on sick leave, or is she being kept away from decision-making meetings that should revolve around her opinion? As he sees his country collapse and his popularity and trust ratings crater, Putin is trying to hide the state of Russia from its people. But he has to face reality. As UNN reported on June 11th, a study has revealed that Russia's financial reserves are almost exhausted. They've fallen to 1.8% of the country's gross domestic product, as energy revenues have declined by 45% year-on-year. The labor shortages that Nabiullina warned of mean that the Russian economy has reached its limits in terms of production, and most of that production is focused on the war rather than the people. Another poll, this time by the Nest Center, shows that Russia's dire economic straits are a driver of discontent among the people. That poll says that only 15% of Russians have a positive opinion about Putin's economic policies, while a third have a negative viewpoint. Again, there are hints of anger coming from polls, but Putin won't waver. He's so hell-bent on taking Ukraine that he continues to drive Russia into craters. People die by the thousands every month. More and more money is needed to sustain the invasion. Yet, Putin responds by signing decrees to increase the size of Russia's army, only adding to these problems. Markayev is right. Russia is on the brink of a social explosion. But ignorant Putin still doesn't see it coming. He restricts and denies, keeping his attention on Ukraine even as the alarm bells ring and the warnings blare out. Russia is on the verge of collapse, and it's Putin that's leading the charge. Putin himself might be the one who destroys Russia and its ambitions for Ukraine, but Ukraine doesn't need much help to show Russia how bad a decision Putin's invasion has been. In less than a year, a brilliant new tactic unveiled by Ukraine has wiped out over 100,000 Russian soldiers. That's the sort of thing that keeps Putin awake at night, and it's the reason why he's letting his country go to the dogs as he puts all of his effort into Ukraine. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show if you want to see more of our analysis of Putin's many failures and the anger that has resulted inside Russia. And thank you for watching.